Welcome to the Sports Podcast that will put you in the zone all the time. Welcome to Pac Sports Zone with me, your host, Peter Pacman Clarke. What's going on, guys? We're here for another episode of Pac Sports Zone. Been a couple weeks since our last episode. A lot of things have went on in terms of sports and in terms of me, but first of all, I just want to say Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Happy Father's Day to my father in heaven right now. Also a belated happy birthday to him, as his birthday was also this month. But let's get right into the sports. We got a lot to talk about this week, as everything from going on today with the U.S. Open, from going on yesterday with boxing, to going on with the Game 7 with the Nets and Bucks. We got a lot of stuff to go through. So let's get right into it, and let's start off actually with the basketball. Game 7, two best words in sports. We had the Milwaukee Bucks and the New Jersey Nets. It's been a back-and-forth series. Nets win the first two, Bucks win the next two. Then Nets win Game 5, Bucks win Game 6. And with all the home teams winning the first 6 games, it's always a very, very dangerous thing for Game 7, because usually when somebody is held serve for the first 6 games of a series at home, usually the home team will win, but there's a lot of different circumstances that went into this game. Kyrie being out, Harden not being the usual Harden, both players on both sides just completely drained. And listen, it was a great series. Just going over it just real quick, we had the heroics from Durant, where he had the 49 points in Game 5. In Game 6, Middleton was pretty much on Giannis's level. And that's the guy I really want to talk about, is Chris Middleton. Now, he's been the second guy for the Bucks the whole year, but this series, he moved up to where he was almost on the same level as Giannis in terms of how important he was in this series. So he was one of the biggest reasons they won last night. He hit clutch shots late. And the thing with Giannis is that it almost seemed like late in games for the past couple games, he hasn't won the ball. He knows they're going to foul him. He knows hasn't been shooting good from the free throw line. It's really in his head right now. And Chris Middleton has stepped up to be the leader, especially late in games, for the Milwaukee Bucks. So congratulations to the Milwaukee Bucks, who found a way to break the seal on the road. Game 7 last night, as it went into overtime with a 115-111 win. Durant had another monstrous game, 49 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, played the entire game. Harden played the entire game. He had 22-9, but was not the normal Harden. You can see that definitely late in the game. The thing that I kind of want to criticize a little bit about this game is that both teams, their coaching was horrible on both sides. I mean, we already know that Bud on the Bucks side, he doesn't make any adjustments that much. He's just going to roll his players out there, try to do the same thing and hope it works. And with the Nets, Nash just pretty much let everybody do ISO. It really wasn't much plays being called. It was nothing to try to get Durant some easy shots. It was pretty much just give Durant the ball, let's hope he can score. And that doesn't work on a higher scale in the NBA. That can work in the regular season. That can work maybe even in the first round. But when you get to the second round, when you get to the conference finals, that stuff doesn't work, because teams play team defense to stop players from doing ISO. So this was a good game. One of the other things I want to criticize about both coaches is use your benches. I mean, you guys have had benches that have been good all year, especially the Nets. The Nets have had a really good bench that, even with some of the hurt people, you should still be able to play 8 people, 9 people. I mean, yesterday they only had pretty much 6 people that played. They pretty much, their starting lineup played the whole game. Jeff Green came on for about 10 minutes or so, and Landry Shamet came on for about 5 minutes. And both Jeff Green and Shamet are both good players. You had Nicholas Claxton, who didn't play, and he's a good shot blocker that could have helped out. They literally played their entire starting lineup pretty much the whole game, including overtime. Durant, 53 minutes. Harden, 53 minutes. Bruce Brown, 52 minutes. 47 minutes for Joe Harris, 40 minutes for Blake Griffin. And you can see at the end of the games, these guys were dying. And this is on the coaching. You got to get your players rest. And then you look even on the Milwaukee side, and they're doing the same thing. You see Giannis with 50 minutes. You see Chris Middleton with 52 minutes. You see Brook Lopez with 46 minutes. PJ Tucker, 38 minutes, and he got fouled out, or he would have been higher than that. Holiday had 48 minutes. Like, these two teams just just ran their starting lineups into the ground in Game 7. That's not how you win a Game 7. And that's the reason why in overtime the scoring was 6-2, because both teams were so tired they couldn't do anything in overtime. There were so many missed shots. It was so sloppy in overtime because they're dead tired. And I want to blame the Nets more for this because I think they have a better bench than the Bucks right now. You have all these guys on the bench and you're not playing them, and it's pointless. You're wearing your players into the ground, and especially when you're playing a guy like Bruce Brown, who's a good player, but he should not be playing 52 minutes in a Game 7 for you. He had 14.6 rebounds, 2 assists. He needs rest. He's not that top tier player that he should not be playing. And I would even play Landry Shamet because he could spread the floor a little bit more than Brown can. It's just was a bad coaching job. And I think they just ran their players into the ground. And you can't do that in the NBA. So first, congratulations, like I said, to the Milwaukee Bucks. They will move on to face the winner of the other series in Game 7 that's going today with the 76ers going against the Atlanta Hawks. And we will talk a little bit about that in a second. But just to wrap up the Milwaukee Bucks next series, it is one of those series that the Nets will be biting themselves for. They were surprisingly, not only after they were up 2-0, they were also up 3-2, knowing that they still had a home game. And they just pretty much blew it. The Nets blew this series. They should be in the Eastern Conference Finals right now. And between bad coaching and obviously Kyrie getting hurt changed a lot, and Harden not playing at his 100%, but bad coaching kept them out of the Eastern Conference Finals. So with that, as I said, the Nets will try to recover and see what happens with them in the offseason. We'll see how many players are back, if there's any trades, anything done. The Milwaukee Bucks will move on to play the winner of this series that will be going on today in Game 7, the 76ers and the Hawks. I'm going to go with the 76ers just because it's very hard. There's two things about this situation that go against the Hawks. One, the Milwaukee Bucks found a way, but it's very hard to win a Game 7 on the road unless you have an extremely abnormal performance by one or two players. And Trae Young can do that. So it is, I'm not saying they don't have a chance, but I just think it's a very hard game for them to win. And two, they don't have experience. This was their first year in the playoffs. You had the Sixers have been in the playoffs for a few years now. They know about Game 7s. They've been beaten in Game 7s, and you think they can learn from those Game 7s. We all remember the Kawhi jumper that bounced on the rim like 6 times before going in. The Sixers have been here before. The Hawks have not. So just off of experience alone, I think that's going to be a big factor in today's game. So I think I'm personally going with the 76ers to win. We'll see what happens. And we'll obviously talk about it next week on the show. Moving over to the West. West is a little bit different. Suns have been resting for a while now. They swept the Nuggets. That one's been done for a while. Other side, though, Clippers and Jazz. You had the Clippers that found a way to win this series without Kawhi Leonard in 6. That was the shocking thing about this, is that the Clippers are a team that you said, all right, once Kawhi, and I haven't heard official word there, they'll suspect that it could be a torn ACL, which will be terrible for them because One, it'll be terrible for him because he can't even think about opting out because who's really going to sign him to let him rest for a year with an ACL? Because ACL is going to keep him out for a while where he's not going to be 100% next year. So it's just a bad situation overall for that. But just to get back to the series itself, Clippers found a way. Paul George and Man stepped up big time in the Game 6. Had over 30 points. I think it was 34 points or 31 points, but he had a great game. They found a way to win that series, and now they move on to face the Suns teams that have been resting, but maybe without Chris Paul. Chris Paul was put into pretty much isolation because of close contact. He's been vaccinated. I don't know. I really don't know what the NBA is doing with this or all sports are doing with this. It's like either you say, all right, all these places are opening up. Every place is being vaccinated. If that's going to open up and some of the rules are going to be lessened in all these different states, then you would think they would be lessened in the NBA. For somebody that has been vaccinated, for when you have a high percentage of people that have been vaccinated in the NBA, and you see that there's hardly any positive tests, to have somebody sit out for a close contact is kind of weird to me. I mean, in terms of checking to see if he's playing today, Unfortunately, he's not. Today we're going to be missing, obviously, Chris Paul and Kawhi for game one. And Kawhi, obviously, is probably going to be done for the year, probably done for the start of next year because if it's an ACL. Paul, we don't know if he'll be able to come back for game two, but it just really kills the series that two important players like that are out. One, obviously, with a serious injury. The other one because of a close contact. He didn't, I don't see anything about him be testing positive. Like I said, he's been vaccinated. So it's a weird situation that the NBA is going to keep him out. And no matter what happens, you're going to have somebody complaining about it because if the Suns lose game one, you're going to say the NBA screwing me because you took out my best player. He doesn't even didn't even test positive. He's been vaccinated. He did everything he's supposed to do, and he's not playing today in game one in a big series, and it's just going to be a tough situation. So it's a good series. Obviously, the Suns have been rolling. They've won They swept the series against the Nuggets. They dominated at the end of the series against the Lakers and destroyed them for the past couple games for their series. They've been on a roll, and now you have to wonder, one, without Chris Paul, can they do that? Because even though he had a couple games, I have no belief in Cameron Payne. And two, they've had a lot of time off, and sometimes it takes a quarter or so to knock off that rust. And if you take a quarter or so to knock off that rust and the Clippers jump out to a 10, 15 point lead, that can, especially without Chris Paul, that can cost you for that first game. So it's going to be a very interesting series starting off today. We'll get more into it as the series goes on. But I just have to say, it's been very entertaining watching the basketball. And I know a lot of people on TV were worried saying, oh, without LeBron James still in, or with Kawhi hurt, or with this guy out, like, how are we going to like how are we going to like basketball? Well, it's been great. I mean, you've had some of the best ratings that you've had this year in terms of basketball for ESPN. And it's been good. You've been able to see a lot of the top players. You've been able to, that aren't the ones that are pushed by ESPN so much. I mean, you have a lot of, even without Kawhi, you've had Luka had his little run in the first round, and he was getting a good ratings for him. Then he went out. You had Kawhi before he got hurt. You have Trae Young trying to emerge as one of the top guys. You got Embiid and Simmons still in Philadelphia, even though Simmons hasn't been playing well. You have Giannis, the two-time MVP. Chris Middleton, as I talked about earlier, has been huge, and he has thrown his name up there. The Jazz, Donovan Mitchell was completely rolling until the end of that series, so you had him playing well. Paul George, and now you'll hear about Man now out of nowhere. So it's been a good series without LeBron, without the other stars that you want to pump up and press so much. I think it's been a great NBA playoffs, and I think it'll continue to be a great NBA playoffs. So we'll see what happens. Just a couple other news that came out this week. Don Nelson has been let go with Dallas, and also Scott Brooks is out with the Washington Wizards. I think that's actually a good thing because I don't think he's really a good coach. You also have Stan Van Gundy that is also out. So it's going to be a few coaching spots opening. In a couple days, in 2 days, the NBA lottery will be out there. So for my fellow Chicago Bulls fans, you got a 20% chance of being in the top four. If you do not get a top four pick, then that pick will go to Orlando. So hopefully they get a top four pick. The guy that I really want the Bulls to take is Evan Mobley, because they need some interior defense. And if you have a 7-foot shot blocker that is super athletic next to Vucevic, that is a great combo below to when you already have an emerging Kobe White at point guard. You got Zach LaVine at shooting guard, and you got Paul Williams. P. Will at small forward, be at the wing spot. So you have a great group there with combining all those guys and having Patrick Williams and Zach LaVine and Kobe and if you got Mobley and they still need a sharp shooter off the bench, but they will be a team to reckon with if they were to get a guy like Mobley to put him in between the long arms of Patrick Williams and the offensive kind of skill that you have with LaVine, Kobe, and Vucevic. So there'll be a good team if they can find a way to do that. So we'll see what happens with that, the draft, and if Bulls get lucky, see who else gets lucky. But we'll talk more about that next week after we find out who actually gets the pick. Moving on, I want to talk a little bit about last night, the boxing fight. First of all, in boxing overall, they had all the talk that Wilder wasn't talking during the press conference with Fury. Guys like Chris Mannix and Mike Coppinger were upset about it. I mean, who cares? I mean, you guys want to make a bigger deal out of it. You want to make a story out of it. That's fine. But who cares if he talks? I mean, we already know the story about Wilder and Fury. This isn't something you have to build up. This isn't nothing that you have to have him answer questions about. Who cares? It's about them getting in the ring, and either you think Fury's going to knock him out in 4, or you think or you want Wilder to knock him out and change up everything with the Fury versus Joshua thing. So I don't want to hear all these reporters complaining and bitching about, oh, he's not talking and he should be talking and he owes us the right. He doesn't owe you anything. You have nothing to do with this fight. You're just reporting, and you're not even really reporting because you're saying things that everybody is hearing. So if he wants to make a press conference, he can say it to everybody. He doesn't have to say it to you. So I don't want to hear these reporters complaining about that. That's kind of like how boxing reporters are. They take it, but not just boxing reporting, because we saw John Heyman get a little upset over Naomi Osaka when she wasn't talking to the press too. These reporters got to get over themselves. The fans aren't here to hear you guys. They're here to see the players, to see the athletes. That's what they care about. And they have a lot more ways that they can connect with the athlete than just through your press conference or through your quotes, which half of you have people pay to see those quotes anyway. So I don't want to hear anything from you. I mean, listen, I have nothing against if you're getting paid to put out the articles because you're supposed to. That's your job. But I don't want to hear you complain about the athletes are robbing the fans when they have so many different ways to connect with the fans on social media. And in terms of seeing something from like The Athletic, or if you want to see on ESPN Plus, they have to pay to see what you wrote on them. So I don't want to hear you talk about that stuff, but I digress. Wilder had that conference, didn't talk. It's going to be about 5 weeks before we see the Wilder versus Fury fight. That should be a good fight. I think it comes down to, we'll talk about it more later, but I think it's all going to come down to, has Wilder found a different way to disguise his right hand? Because Fury, before the break, he knew he had figured out when his trigger for when the right hand was coming. And he didn't know that during the first fight. He didn't. And that's the reason why he got knocked down twice. But he did figure out during the second fight. The question is if he can figure it out again during this third fight. And listen, by the time they fight, it's going to be 17 months since they fought. Fury is not in boxing rhythm. There's a difference between being in rhythm and being in boxing rhythm. He's not going to be in boxing rhythm when he fights him, and I think that's going to be an advantage towards Wilder. We'll see if Wilder can take advantage of it. Just a couple more stories about boxing. First, Teofimo Lopez tested positive for COVID, so that fight is being pushed back. That fight was supposed to be upcoming, but that will be pushed back to, I think they said August. So that's going to be a little bit of while before we get Teofimo back in there. So not sure if I think I heard that he was unvaccinated. Well, we don't know, but we'll find out more about that as we move along the year. Lastly, in terms of boxing, I want to talk about what happened last night. It was a really kind of a sideshow. You obviously had the exhibition with Camacho Jr. and Chavez Sr. Got a little heated at one point. It looked like Chavez Sr. actually wanted to have a real fight, not just an exhibition. Took his headgear off, wanted to fight for real, but everything cooler has prevailed. But the story of the night was Chavez Jr. losing to Anderson Silva, an older MMA guy. Now he was a star in MMA. He's an MMA legend, but he's not a boxing guy. And he, in a split decision, lost to Anderson Silva. It was pretty much the final coffin in the Chavez Jr., just the nail of being a Chavez. It was an embarrassment to the name. It's shameful for the name. And it almost was not highlighted, but it almost is being talked about more, that instead of calling his own son over in that last round that Chavez Sr. fights, instead of calling his son over to help him or be in his corner, with one round to go, it was Canelo Alvarez that came over in the corner, and they shared a hug after the fight and everything like that. And we've seen It's pretty much Chavez Sr. hug Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez more than his son in the past couple of years. So it's just been a horrible boxing career for Chavez Jr. And it looks like Sr. is pretty much showing that by showing his love for the other people in the sport that are pretty much in the place that Chavez Jr. should be in. But with that said, it was fun. It was okay. But it's just shameful that Chavez Jr. is like that. That's pretty much, like I said, the nail in the coffin for him. They should strip his last name as Chavez after that. He definitely can't do it anymore. But moving on, just quickly, a little bit about the U.S. Open. Looks like it's starting actually now as I'm recording this a little after 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So it's just starting on TV. You're going to have about 8 hours of coverage on it. So it's going to be all day. Should be fun to watch, to be honest with you. A lot of top names are up there. You got Koepka that's within range, within three of his boy, Bryson DeChambeau. So Bryson DeChambeau is tied for fourth as there's a three-way tie for first. And DeChambeau is right behind him. So there's some good leader names up there. So it's going to be a fun thing to watch at the end. See if you have the big names up there, with a couple holes to go. Like I said, that's going to be something that's going to be on all day. So if you're not a big golf fan, but you are interested in something that maybe some drama late, I would say turn on around 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. See if Koepka catch up to DeChambeau, and if we have those two down late, or if DeChambeau is in first place, and then it could get very interesting. So I suggest if you are a golf fan, or if you even are partial, just sports fan period, it could be some really good drama to watch that. So that's what I suggest watching there. Just want to follow up with a couple more sports before I get to the wrestling, because Hell in a Cell is tonight. Baseball. They implemented the new rule, 10-game suspension with pay for illegal substances. I always thought the suspension with pay is just a vacation. It's kind of stupid. But I mean, it does hurt your team because you're going to be out for that many games. Well, you're going to be out for a pitcher 2 games. So, but it's one of those situations where I can't believe people are complaining about it. I mean, you got Garrett Cole that's on TV pretty much crying and complaining about we can't cheat anymore. I mean, they could consider it cheating. Like, you're not allowed to use an illegal substance. So it is cheating, and you're on there complaining about not being able to cheat, saying people don't realize how hard it is to grip a baseball. Well, people have been doing it without illegal substances too. So are you saying that your half of your career has been just a fraud? Like, I don't want to hear that crap. Like, don't complain about that not being able to cheat. Like, it boggles my mind. But moving on to just quickly talk about my Braves. In my mind, their season is pretty much over. Just way too many injuries. You got Soroka that probably is gone for the year. Ozuna went through his case and he may be in jail soon, so who knows about him. You got Tucker who got hurt. You got Pache who's been hurt. Noah has gotten hurt. Obviously, Fried has been back, but he's not the same. He was hurt at the start of the year. Chris Martin missed some time. They took too long to sign Shane Green back, so their bullpen has been horrible. It's just way too many things, way too many bad factors. And I know if they find a way to get into the playoffs, there's going to be maybe this is the year, because a lot of times teams just find a way to get hot at the right time. And if they get hot at the right time, maybe they can sneak into the playoffs and then go from there, because they do have still some really good hitters, obviously with Acuna, still with Freeman. Darno will be back by then, but assumingly he'll be back by then. They still have good players on their team, but you just it's going to be very weird to see if they end up being buyers or sellers around the deadline. So that's going to be very interesting for the Braves. That's going to tell you what their management thinks. And listen, in my mind, Snitker, I never thought he was a good manager. You got Double A at GM. I don't think Anthopoulos should be there, because he's not the Anthopoulos that we thought we were getting. We thought we were getting the Anthopoulos that was from Toronto, that was aggressive, that went after guys, that went after Tulo. Not the guy that just sits back and holds prospects and hopes that people come at, and it's annoying. And every single year, you're seeing the Braves now go through the same thing where they're signing one pitcher, and not even a great pitcher, but they're signing a solid pitcher for a very high amount of money, 1-year deals, and it's not working out. You're wasting money, whether it's Drew Smiley. Morton is starting to come around, but he's still a lot of money. Between those two guys, you sign them both to 1-year deals, and it's like $25 million. I'd rather you just sign the top player and pay him $25 million than to split it between two guys and both of them be average or suck. So I think everybody needs to be changed in the organization right now. It's a horrible situation right now for Braves fans. And hopefully something changes soon. I just am not a big believer in it. I thought their big chance to win was last year. They were the better team. They were up 3-2 on the Dodgers, and they blew it. And because Snit was not aggressive in Game 6, it went to Game 7, and Game 7 is always a toss-up. So I just think that the Braves need a change up top, and I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon because their ownership is cheap, and I can go on for a whole podcast about this. So I'll just say that they need a lot of changes, and it's not with the players. It's a lot of it has to do with the top of the organization. But we'll revisit a lot of these things. The All-Star game is coming up in about 3-4 weeks on July 13th. We'll talk about what teams are in first place. Can they hold on to first place? What teams are on hot streaks and can catch up? But it'll be fun. Moving on just quickly to hockey, I'll tell you just real quick, I've been rooting big time for the Tampa Bay Lightning because they're pretty much Rangers South. They have like 6 players on their team that were New York Rangers at one point. And I'll go to Knights because I just always like to go to Knights. They're a veteran team. Those are my 2 picks to go to the Stanley Cup Finals. And when we get to the Stanley Cup Finals, I'll talk a little bit about it. So sometime next week, or later on this week, we'll get into that. But see if my predictions come out. As if it is those 2 teams, I have no idea who to pick right now. But to win their conference finals, I'm going with Tampa Bay Lightning and the Golden Knights and the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Quickly to talk about the Euros, soccer or football. I have to say I think France looks really good. I know they drew yesterday, so that part wasn't great. But I still think that they have great midfielders. You got Pogba and Kante both there in the midfield, and those two, I can't remember what was the streak. It was like 8 or 9 games in a row where if they have started in the midfield, they don't lose. And from learning from my boy Vic and Mike in Chicago, if you have good midfielders, you can control the game. A lot of teams have good strikers, but the midfielders are who control the game. And with those two in the middle, it's very, very, very tough to beat them. And then you throw in the people up front when they have Benzema and Griezmann and Mbappe. I think France is my pick to win it all. After France, then I would say probably Belgium with De Bruyne and Hazard. And then I would move to Germany. Germany's always up there, and that's why that Group F is just a hellacious group, because you got Kroos and you got Muller and Neuer at goalie, probably one of the best goalies in the world, and it's just going to be fun. First of all, it's fun to watch any game from that group, but after that, when they get into the knockout stage, it's going to be fun. I'm telling you, a lot of people just like to watch the World Cup, but if you're watching, whether it's the Gold Cup for North America or Copa for South America, or whether you're watching the Euros for Europe, it's a fun tournament to watch, and it gets you really into the mood to see what players are upcoming, I'm a person that's just learning the sport over the past year, and I've been watching a lot of it lately, and it's really fun to watch. It's much more fun sport to watch than I had thought about a couple of years ago. So now, if there's any game with any type of up and coming, even United States player, I know they may not be that great, but they are a young team that's getting better. They have a good front 6 with Timothy Way and obviously Pulisic, and we'll see if Sargent can be better as a finisher, as a striker. They got the good midfielders with McKennie. McKennie is one of my favorite players to watch. He's one of those guys that he will get in your face. He's a strong player. He makes good passes. He can score. He's one of my favorite players on the U.S. team. And you obviously got Tyler Adams there, and you got the young guys like Gio Reyna. So they're starting to develop their defenders. They need better defenders, and they need to settle on a goalie. But I think right now that the United States team, obviously not for the upcoming 2022, but for 2026, they can at least be looked at as not a horrible team. They can actually, I don't want to say contend to win the whole thing, but they're a team that they can win a round or maybe even two in the knockout round. I think they can be that good in 2026. But in 2022, it'll be fun because they have a lot of good young players and they have players that play internationally right now. And that's the thing they didn't really have before. They've had a couple players play internationally, but now their entire team, pretty much every person I just said, plays in Europe. Or plays, whether it's French League with with Way, Pulisic obviously plays for Chelsea and all those guys. And watching these guys play now in Europe and actually having impacts is showing how good that they have the chance to be in a couple years. So once they start playing together, learning each other's basic moves and everything, and like I said, even the young guys coming out now with Gio Reyna coming up, that team's going to be really good in 2026 because everybody's going to be under 30 years old and they're going to have like 5 years of experience of playing with each other. That 2026 team is going to be good. So I would say keep a lookout for that. Moving on to just a little bit of the NFL. I'm trying to make not a big deal of it, but obviously it's a big deal because I mentioned it last show. Julio Jones is a Tennessee Titan. And I think that makes them a top 5 offense. Now, keep in mind, last year, in terms of yardage, they were the number 3 offense in the league. They're number 4, in terms of yardage. And then in terms of scoring, they were the number 4 or number 3 offense in the league too. I think number 4, scoring about 29 points per game. So you take away Corey Davis and replace him with Julio Jones, and you obviously patch a little bit at right tackle. I think you upgrade at right tackle. You bring back Taylor Lewan, who's a top 5 left tackle who was out the entire year last year. And I don't want to hear about Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith is a very athletic player. And he's made some really good catches. He shows big flashes, but he gets hurt a lot and he's inconsistent. And when Adam Humphries got hurt last year, Anthony Firkser was the one who was actually playing a lot in the slot. Jonnu only played half a year last year, so Firkser was in there as a starter most of the year. So that's not that big of a change for the Titans. So to me, you upgrade at left tackle big time. You at least stay the same, if not upgraded at right tackle. And now you replace Corey Davis with Julio Jones. And I don't know what you're going to do if you're a defense, because let's say you're playing against those two. You have to double team Julio Jones. You have to double team AJ Brown, because if you don't double team those two one-on-one, they will beat pretty much every corner in the entire league. You could say maybe the top 5 corners in the league maybe can guard them one-on-one, but other than that, you're going to have to double team those two guys. And if you double team those two guys, that takes away 4 of your guys from the secondary. So you could single coverage Josh Reynolds in the slot. So you've already used 5 secondary guys in your secondary to cover them. Firkser is a very good receiver. He's not a good blocker, but he's a very good receiver. So you're going to have one person covering him. So if you spread your guys open, you spread the offense. You got Firkser, you got to guard one person. Josh Reynolds guard one person. And they can beat people one-on-one, but let's say you guard them one-on-one, and then you double team the two on the outside. You have already taken away, and you got to keep somebody to at least guard the running back in the backfield in case Henry or somebody, Evans, comes out of the backfield. You don't want somebody to be wide open or they'll just scamper down the sidelines for a touchdown. So that takes away 7 guys. So that leaves 5 guys. So even if you keep the guy in that's going to be guarding the running back, you're screwed, because you have 7 men in there. Excuse me, you have 5. So you add that, you have 6 guys in the box to guard against 5 offensive linemen and Derrick Henry. So even if you do single cover one of those cornerbacks and you put 7 men in the box, so you're first of all, you're going against a 7-man box with Derrick Henry. He runs a lot of 7 and 8-man boxes, so he's used to that. And now you're going to have either Julio Jones or AJ Brown single covered. So it's going to be hellacious time for defensive coordinators trying to decide, when everybody is healthy, how to stop that team in Tennessee. And their defense is getting better. They replaced 7 guys on defense. I don't want to hear the people say, oh, it's chemistry and all that stuff. Yes, chemistry means a lot, but they were horrible last year. They were completely horrible. So change is not bad when you're completely horrible. You got Jayon Brown, who's coming back. That's their best coverage linebacker. They completely changed their secondary, flipped out everybody except for Amani Hooker, who's going to be the safety next to Kevin Byard. And obviously you changed Autry as D'Amico Autry as the D tackle, and you changed Bud Dupree as a pass rusher. And he's replacing a pass rusher that got 0 sacks. So you're not going to do worse than 0 sacks. So I think their defense will be good. All their defense needs to do is be average, because if you're going to score 35 points per game, you just need an average defense. And by the way, if they could score 30, 33, 34 points per game, that's as much as any team has scored since the 2013 Denver Broncos, when they scored 37 per game. So teams don't usually score 34 points per game or 35 points per game. And I think this Titans team definitely has a chance to do that. So that's just quick talk about the Titans. I think when you talk about the best offenses in the league, you have to include the Titans, the Cowboys, because they just have a good offensive line with Zeke Elliott, and then you got the 3 really good wide receivers. Chiefs are always up there. I think the Chiefs are in a similar situation with the Titans in that you have 2 guys you have to double team in Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, and that's what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did do in the Super Bowl. The big difference is that if you do double team those 2, the Titans are willing to run it with Derrick Henry. The Chiefs just seem allergic to running the football. If they ran the football, they would have won that Super Bowl. It would have been completely different. They would have kept Tom Brady off the field. They would have gotten chunks of yard on offense. And that's the reason why Damian Williams was the real Super Bowl MVP the year ago when they beat the 49ers, because 49ers did the same thing, double teamed their top 2 guys. And any good team is going to do that. You're going to take away your top 2 weapons by double teaming them and make somebody else beat you. And the Chiefs, they did it against the 49ers, gave the ball to Damian Williams, and he had a monster game. The Titans would give the ball to Derrick Henry, have a monster game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when you double team Mike Evans and you double team Chris Godwin, you had Gronkowski. He threw to Gronkowski. He was able to run the ball to Fournette and Ronald Jones. You have to do different things when they take away your top 2 players. And that's what the Chiefs didn't do in the Super Bowl. So, but you have Cowboys, like I said, Chiefs, you have Titans. I also think you have to put the Buccaneers up there, as I just mentioned them, and also the Buffalo Bills, as their offense may not have the stars that other teams have, but the running ability of Josh Allen is pretty much another thing that much of the other teams don't have other than Dak. Dak runs, like Mahomes doesn't run, Brady can't run, but Dak can run. We'll see how well he runs now after the surgery. Tannehill can run. He's had 11 rushing touchdowns in the last 2 years. So, but it adds another level to the offense, to where it's very hard to stop offense when you have a solid wide receivers, but you also have a quarterback that can run. So, some other quick notes on the NFL. Just one pretty much quick note. Rodgers still not traded, still in Green Bay, still not playing, still holding out. We'll see what happens as that goes. In the next couple weeks, I'm going to have Troy Recknick on he covers the Denver Broncos, so I'll have him on to talk about Broncos, and that is one of the spots that is rumored to be going after Rodgers. So we'll quickly talk about their camp and how it's going. And I'll also have Jim Wyatt from Tennessee. He's the main Tennessee Titans beat writer, and he writes for NFL.com and for the Titans Online. I'll have him on a couple weeks. We'll talk about the Julio Jones stuff, and we'll talk about other things in the NFL with him. So Jim's been on a couple times on the other shows, so he's always a good guy on. And Troy's been on also with the 2 Dudes in the Mexican show. So we'll have other people on, and we'll have guests on as we come up in the next couple weeks as we go into July. But just really quick for the last 5-6 minutes of the show, I just want to go through the wrestling. I'm going to skip AEW because nothing significant really went on. Nothing since Double or Nothing happened. With Raw, pretty much still sucks. I'm not sure where they're going with the Kofi and MVP stuff. Roman's still dominating SmackDown. Street Profits are being buried. I don't know why. I don't know what's going on with them. I do like the Usos, the angle that they're going with, the kind of back and forth for them. But the real thing has been NXT. Samoa Joe is back. That was a big thing this week. He got right in carrying Cross's face. He choked out Adam Cole. Cross is also a monster. We already know that. We saw that how he dominated In Your House against O'Reilly, Cole, Pete Dunne, and Johnny Gargano. Io Shirai came back this past week with Zoe Stark, as they look like they're going to be challenging for the tag team titles, which is held by right now Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. Also, you have Miss Gonzalez and Dakota Kai also going to be challenging for the title. So I'll tell you that the women's division in NXT is very good. So I definitely suggest watching some of those matches, and it looks like those matches are going to be heating up pretty soon. So I say that's definitely something that you want to do. Really quick, I want to get into the Hell in a Cell matches. They're going to be 6 matches, so I can go through them pretty quick for these last 3-4 minutes. Cesaro versus Seth Rollins in a regular singles match. It can go either way. I know they've been hyping Cesaro a lot. Seth Rollins has kind of been fine with putting Cesaro over, so I'm kind of leaning towards Cesaro winning the match. I don't think that they're going to pretty much bury Cesaro after they built him up this much, gave him a title shot and all that stuff, but we'll see, because WWE does weird things. Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. If they let them fight the way they used to in NXT, it'll be an extraordinary match. I don't think they will, especially with Sami. They've kind of tamed in Sammy with how he's been wrestling lately. So I'm not really completely sure how this is going to go, but I'm going to guess that Sami Zayn wins off of some type of interference. So we'll see. I mean, they always say that somebody is going to be banned from ringside or whatever, but Sami Zayn, they've kind of made him into like the sideshow wrestler. So, but sideshow wrestlers at pay-per-views, they usually get some weird thing to go their way. So I'll go with Sami Zayn to win that one. Alexa Bliss versus Shayna Baszler. Something weird is going to happen. We already know that. Whether it's fire coming through the ground, or the Fiend will show up, or the doll will show up somewhere, and Shayna Baszler will either run out the ring or count it out, or something weird is going to happen where she's probably going to be distracted, get hit by Alexa Bliss, and lose the match. So I don't think this one is going to be really a classic or a big one to watch, but I'm just going to go with Alexa Bliss to win that. Bianca Belair versus Bayley. I don't think they're going to take the title off of Bianca this fast. There could be some type of interference, but I just don't see them hyping Bayley. They haven't been really hyping Bayley in terms of wins lately. They've been more hyping her with how she talks or with backstage stuff. So I don't see them putting the title on her. So I'm going to assume that Bianca Belair holds on to that title. Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair. This one is interesting because I was surprised that they put the belt on Rhea Ripley in the first place, but they always seem to be screwing Asuka somehow. So that really shouldn't surprise me. But Charlotte Flair is always the person that when she wants the title, she gets the title. So I'm going to actually lean towards Charlotte Flair winning the women's title. So, so far going into the main event, I got Cesaro beating Seth Rollins. I got Sami Zayn over Kevin Owens, Alexa Bliss over Shayna Baszler, Bianca Belair over Bayley, and Charlotte Flair over Rhea Ripley. Now for the main event, for these last minute or so that we have, main event, Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre. This one I'm kind of undecided on because I think it'll be normal for them to give the belt to McIntyre. He's never really had the belt with a crowd. So I don't know if they feel like they owe him a run with the crowd, as they're about to start having crowds back next month. They may want him to have the title. They've already given him like 15 rematches. And it's one of those situations where if Bobby Lashley won, he probably can't get another rematch now. I mean, people are starting to complain about it, but it's one of those situations now that, you know what? I think it may be time for them to give him the title, give him a run, and that's it. So I think it'll kind of suck for Bobby Lashley, but Bobby Lashley, I mean, you already can see MVP talking to Kofi a lot. You can see him going off to other people. It may be time to split it up a little bit. So I'm going to just go with Kofi to be MVP's new guy pretty soon, somehow. And I'm just going to think that that's how it's going to be. MVP is going to go with Kofi somehow. Lashley's going to be done. And McIntyre is going to be the new champion. And we'll see what happens on Monday night, see if that changes anything, if it helps Monday Night Raw or whatever, because like I said, it's been horrible lately. But that's it for Pack Sports Zone this week. Hope you tried to fit a lot of information in there. But once again, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Happy Father's Day to my father in heaven. Happy Father's Day to everybody. And enjoy Hell in the Cell tonight. Enjoy U.S. Open Championship in golf. Enjoy all the baseball and the basketball. Game 7 today. It's a full sports day. So they made it a perfect day for Father's Day. Lots of sports, lots of things to talk about. I'm your host, Peter Pacman Clarke. I'll be back with you again soon. Peace out.